Shalom, and welcome back to this week's News Bytes. This week's newsletter is called Who Killed Jesus? And is on Luke 23, 1-26. From Eliyahu. Shalom, friends. Who done it? Who killed Jesus? His Hebrew name is Yeshua, but that question, who killed Jesus? Somehow, that question is always seen using his Greek-based name, Jesus. That seems to suggest to me that this question has its origins from the Gentiles, not from the Jews. At any rate, since that is how the question is usually phrased, that's how I'm asking it as well. It is obvious that Jesus was crucified as a Jewish victim of a Roman death sentence. This is impossible to deny. A Gentile Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, condemned him to death and had him flogged and crucified by Gentile Roman soldiers. From one perspective, this was not unusual. The Roman Empire was known for being brutal and often made gruesome examples out of the people they viewed as troublemakers and malcontents. Further, Judea, although a Roman province, was not populated by Romans but was occupied territory. The Judean population did not rest easy under the iron fist of Rome, and many were fanatical zealots who might be termed terrorists today. The political climate was often a powder keg, just waiting for a spark to set it off. Jesus was one of the thousands of Jews crucified by the Romans, even if the most famous in history, and from that perspective, Rome killed Jesus. Since it could be said that Rome killed Jesus, why does nobody hate the people of Rome today? That would be ludicrous, wouldn't it? After all, the Romans living today had nothing to do with the unjust execution of Jesus 2,000 years ago. It would be patently unfair on its face to hate modern-day Romans for acts committed by some of their ancient ancestors. This is a non-issue though, since nobody hates Romans for the crime. Nobody blames modern-day Romans for the murder of Jesus, but many people blame and hate the whole race of Jews for exactly that same crime, even now after 2,000 years. Does that make sense to you? Clearly, this prejudice is not rational, yet anti-Semitism is a growing issue today, and some of it is driven by this accusation against all Jews that they are Christ killers, and therefore criminals. For example, a recent survey concluded that about a quarter of Americans believe that Jews were responsible for the death of Christ. No doubt this belief has played a role in the attacks on synagogues that we have seen in the news with increasing frequency lately here in America. Of course, hatred of Jews is not limited to America. It is growing in many places, including Europe, as The Guardian recently reported. Quote, "Anti-Semitism is rising sharply across Europe," experts have said, as France reported a 74% increase in the number of offenses against Jews last year, and Germany said the number of violent anti-Semitic attacks had surged by more than 60%. The figures confirm the results of 3 recent Europe-wide surveys showing Jewish people feel at greater risk and are experiencing markedly more aggression amid a generalized increase in racist hate speech and violence in a significantly coarser, more polarized political environment. France's Interior Ministry said this week that recorded incidents of anti-Semitism rose to 541 last year, from 311 in 2017, while the German government said offenses motivated by hatred of Jews hit a 10-year high of 1,646 in 2018. Physical attacks rose from 37 to 62, leaving 43 people needing medical treatment. As the article points out, in Germany, offenses motivated by anti-Semitism hit a 10-year high last year. What can be done in response to these crimes of hate? In its May 26, 2019 edition, BBC News reported a rather strange response by a German government official in an article entitled, "German Jews warned not to wear kippahs after rise in anti-Semitism." Quote, "The German government's anti-Semitism commissioner has urged Jews to avoid wearing skullcaps in public. Felix Klein warned Jews against donning the kippah in parts of the country following a rise in anti-Semitism. He said his opinion on the matter had changed compared with what it used to be. Mr. Rivlin said he was shocked by Mr. Klein's warning and considered it a capitulation to anti-Semitism. We will never submit. We will never lower our gaze, and we will never react to anti-Semitism with defeatism and expect and demand our allies act in the same way," the Israeli president said. Some people blame the gospel account of Jesus' death for continued anti-Semitism. It has even been suggested that all passages deemed by some as anti-Semitic should be removed from the Bible. The publicity-conscious group of scholars known as the Jesus Seminar now declares that all passages in the Gospels that claim the Jews are at least partly responsible for the crucifixion are not authentic and should be removed from the New Testament. Such revisionism reached a new extreme at a conference held at Oxford in September 1989, when A. Roy Eckhart, emeritus professor at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, suggested that Christians ought to abandon the resurrection of Jesus, since it remains a primordial and unceasing source of the Christian world's anti-Judaism. It seems to me that blaming all Jews for the death of Jesus is ignorant, as is blaming the eyewitness accounts of the Gospels for anti-Semitism. When we consider the actual accounts of Jesus' death given in Scripture, they provide us with no basis for hating any race of people. Instead, they inform us of historical events that actually occurred 2,000 years ago that offer salvation to all persons, both Jews and Gentiles alike. So, who did kill Jesus? You might already know, but in case you're confused, the Sabbath meeting is right here. Who killed Jesus? Like and comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.